It's a new year and a new chance for you to make a fresh start with your compliance. We're going to be bringing you a daily tip, strategy, or idea that you can use to improve your program. Here's your host, Tom Fox, the Compliance Evangelist.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, and I'd like to welcome you to the September edition of 1 Month to a More Effective Compliance Program. This month, we're looking at written standards. Today, we're going to take up the topic of clearly articulated written standards. The written standards requirement have long been memorialized in the U.S. Sentencing Guidelines, which contains 7 basic compliance elements that can be tailored to fit the needs and financial realities of any given organization. From these 7 compliance elements, the DOJ has crafted its minimum best practices compliance program, which is now attached to every DPA and NPA issued. These requirements were incorporated into the FCPA enforcement policy, the 2023 ECCP, and the 2020 FCPA Resource Guide, 2nd edition. The U.S. Sentencing Guidelines assumes that every compliance and ethics program begins with a written standard of conduct, i.e. a code of conduct. What would be in this written standard of conduct? The starting point is as follows. Element 1, standards of conduct, policies and procedures. An organization should have an established set of compliance standards and procedures. These standards should not be a paper-only document, but a living document that promotes organizational culture and encourages ethical conduct and a commitment to compliance with applicable regulations and laws. The 2020 FCPA Resource Guide, 2nd edition, stated, a company's code of conduct is often the foundation upon which an effective compliance program is built. As the DOJ has repeatedly noted in its charging documents, the most effective codes are clear, concise, and accessible to all employees and to those conducting business on the company's behalf. Indeed, it would be difficult to effectively implement a compliance program if it was not available in the local language so that employees in foreign subsidiaries can access and understand it. When assessing a compliance program, the DOJ and SEC will review whether the company has taken steps to make certain the code of conduct remains current, effective, and whether a company has periodically reviewed and updated its code. The ECCP added, any well-designed compliance program entails policies and procedures that give content and effect to ethical norms and that address and aim to reduce identified risks by the company as a part of the risk assessment process. As a threshold matter, prosecutors should examine whether a company has a code of conduct that sets forth, among other things, the company's commitment to full compliance with relevant federal laws that is accessible and applicable to all employees. As a corollary, prosecutors should also assess whether a company has established policies and procedures that incorporate the culture into its day-to-day operations. Your code of conduct, policies, and procedures should be grouped under the general classification of written standards, comprising 3 levels of written standards. First, every company should have a code of conduct, which should most generally express its ethical principles. But simply having a code of conduct is not enough. A second step mandates that every company should have policies in place that build upon the foundation of the code of conduct and articulate code-based policies, which should cover issues such as bribery, corruption, and accounting practices. From the base of a code of conduct and policies, every company should ensure that enabling procedures are implemented to confirm those policies are implemented, followed, and enforced. Best practices also require companies to have additional written standards, including, for example, detailed due diligence protocols for screening third-party business partners for criminal backgrounds, financial stability, and improper sanctions with government agencies. Ultimately, the purpose of establishing written, effective standards is to demonstrate your compliance program is more than just words on a piece of paper. The written policies and procedures required for a best practices compliance program are well known and long established. As stated in the FCPA Resource Guide 2nd edition, Among the risks that a company may need to address include the nature and extent of transactions with foreign governments, including payments to foreign officials, the use of third parties, gifts, travel and entertainment expenses, charitable and political donations, facilitating and expediting payments. Policies help form the basis of expectation and conduct in your company, and procedures are the documents that operationalize these standards of conduct. The role of compliance policies is to provide guidance and to protect companies despite an occasional hiccup. Policies provide a basic set of guidelines for employees to follow. They include general do's and don'ts, work process flows, and specific issue guidelines. By establishing what is and what is not acceptable compliance behavior, a company can mitigate the compliance risk posed by employees who make foolish decisions or otherwise engage in unethical behavior. While policies are not a guarantee that things will not go sideways, they are a line of defense if they do go sideways. The effective implementation and enforcement of compliance policies demonstrate to the government that a company is operating ethically and proactively for the benefit of its stakeholders, its employees, and the community it serves. If a company is subject to the FCPA, it is an international company, so that can be quite a wide community. The FCPA Resources Guide ended its section on policies with the following. Regardless of the specific policies and procedures implemented, these standards should also apply to personnel at all levels of the company. It is important that policies are fairly and consistently applied across your organization if the policies and procedures are to be effective and to prevent losing credibility. This point cannot be overemphasized. If an employee is going to be terminated for fudging expense accounts in Brazil, you had best make sure the same conduct lands your top producer in the United States with the same quality of discipline. So what are today's 3 key takeaways? Number 1, a code of conduct together with policies and procedures has long been recognized as a cornerstone of the best practices compliance program. Number 2, each level of written standards builds upon one another, so consider this integration step. And number 3, the fair process doctrine applies to your written standards. This is Tom Fox again. Thank you for listening to this episode of 31 Days to a More Effective Compliance Program. 31 Days to a More Effective Compliance Program is a part of the Compliance Podcast Network.